Maya Torres had scrubbed diner tables so long that her hands stung with bleach and exhaustion. But the real ache came from the fear she carried in her chest. Rent due in 5 days, a daughter depending on her, and no miracle in sight. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her as she wiped the same booth again, trying not to think about the hollow space where hope used to live. Then the diner door chimed, and Earl Peterson shuffled in with the weight of secrets in his weathered eyes. He slid a yellowed envelope toward her, the edges soft from decades of waiting. Her name curled across the front in her grandmother's thin, unmistakable handwriting. Inside was a deed to the Thornhill Lodge, the abandoned stone giant haunting Mercy Ridge. A place locals whispered about, a place said to curse anyone foolish enough to stay there. Maya's heart clattered painfully as she stared at the document, trying to understand why a grandmother who barely spoke to her would leave her a rotting fortress no one wanted. But desperation had a way of turning even fear into possibility, and by the time Maya stepped into the cold night, envelope clutched tight, she knew she couldn't walk away. She had nothing left to lose, and a daughter depending on her to try, even if the path ahead felt like walking straight into a storm that had been waiting for her arrival. The road to Mercy Ridge carved through dense forest, its shadows deepening with every mile as Maya drove the borrowed pickup carrying everything she and Sophie owned. The lodge appeared suddenly between the trees, 3 stories of weathered stone, broken windows, and a porch sagging like the weary spine of a creature too old to die. Yet Sophie's eyes brightened with awe, not fear. She ran room to room, discovering window seats, clawfoot tubs, and staircases that curved like something from fairy tales. For the first time in years, Maya watched her daughter smile without restraint, and something inside her softened despite the unease crawling across her skin. That night, sleeping bags rustled beneath the tall, cracked ceiling of Sophie's chosen room. The lodge creaked, groaned, and shifted like a sleeping giant adjusting its bones. Maya lay awake listening, wondering whether she'd made a mistake or found the one chance that fate still allowed her. Dawn painted thin golden lines across dusty floorboards, and the sight of Sophie stretching happily made the decision feel like survival rather than surrender. The lodge was old, unsettling, and rumored to be cursed, but it was theirs. And when Maya whispered, "We'll make this work," into the cool morning air, she had no idea that the house held secrets waiting beneath her feet. Secrets that would unravel everything she believed about her family, her past, and her own strength. In the following weeks, the Thornhill Lodge began to wake under Maya's relentless care. She scrubbed grime from windows, hauled out forgotten trunks, and swept floors that hadn't felt a broom in decades. Townspeople watched her with disbelief, whispering bets on how long she'd last before the curse drove her out. But Sophie found magic in every corner, dusty marbles, faded books, and paths in the forest behind the house that felt like secret worlds. One evening, as Maya wrestled with the stubborn kitchen pump, she crawled across the floor and noticed something strange. A patch of wood near the pantry echoed hollower than the rest. A nearly invisible seam revealed itself beneath her fingertips. She pried it carefully with a butter knife until the board lifted, releasing a cold breath of air that smelled of stone and waiting darkness. Beneath it, a narrow staircase descended into the unknown. Every instinct urged her to close it and pretend she hadn't heard it call, but survival had taught Maya that answers mattered. With Sophie waiting upstairs, she descended. Her flashlight revealed stone shelves lining the walls, packed with jars, hundreds of them, each filled with jewelry, old coins, watches, and paper currency from decades past. Trunks held paintings wrapped in brittle paper, silverware sets, and leather-bound books that looked centuries old. This wasn't storage. This was a hidden vault. And whatever it meant, it had just rewritten the story of the cursed lodge forever. That night, long after Sophie slept, Maya returned to the cellar armed with a lantern and notebook. She cataloged each jar and trunk, her hands trembling as she uncovered more stolen artwork, rare books, and valuables than she had ever imagined existed outside of museums. The ledgers she found changed everything. Decades of entries documenting thefts disguised as recoveries, meticulously recorded by William Thornhill and later continued by his son Theodore, the same man who had later lost the lodge to her grandmother in a reckless poker game. The last line in the ledger chilled her: collection complete, will remain secure. She added values, cross-checked items online, and by the time Dawn app approached, she had tallied over $200 million in stolen property beneath her kitchen floor. For a woman who often skipped meals to make sure Sophie ate, the number felt surreal, like holding lightning in her bare hands. But all soon crumbled under the weight of fear. Returning everything meant losing the only home she had and risking suspicion or worse. Keeping it meant becoming what the Thornhills had been. And looming over that impossible choice was the eerie sense that someone, somewhere, already knew she'd found the vault. Every creak of the lodge felt like footsteps. Every shift of the wind felt like a warning. Maya understood then that she wasn't just living in a forgotten house. She was sitting atop a secret that had been protected, feared, and hunted for generations. The next morning, Maya reached out to a Boston law firm specializing in art restitution. Their swift, cautious reply confirmed her fears. If others knew the lodge's history, she needed protection immediately. Almost as if the email had summoned danger, a sleek, dark sedan appeared in town, parked wherever Maya went. It watched her with tinted windows while she bought new locks, motion lights, and supplies to fortify the lodge. Then one night, at nearly 3 in the morning, the sedan crept up the driveway with its headlights off, idling for minutes before vanishing as quietly as it came. The following afternoon, a luxury SUV arrived at the lodge. A silver-haired woman stepped out, flanked by 2 intimidating men. "Miss Torres," she called through the door, "I am Victoria Thornhill." The name struck Maya like a blow. When she refused to open the door, Victoria's tone sharpened. She offered Maya $5 million cash to allow her to remove certain family pieces and pretend the cellar had been empty. For a moment the offer shimmered like salvation, but Sophie's steady, frightened whisper, "Mama, don't," cut through the temptation. Maya stood straighter, voice trembling but unbroken. "Leave my property," she said. Victoria's icy laugh promised trouble. "You are making a very expensive mistake." When the SUV rolled away, Maya felt the full weight of the storm coming for her, and knew she had chosen the only path she could live with. Less than 30 minutes later, the FBI's convoy arrived, tires crunching over gravel like a lifeline delivered just in time. Agent Sarah Mendez took charge with calm authority, her questions precise, her gaze steady as Maya led her to the hidden cellar. The agent's stunned expressions confirmed the truth. This was one of the largest stolen collections ever uncovered. Some items were linked to high-profile thefts, others to international smuggling rings. Maya had stepped into far more danger than she understood. Agent Mendez insisted on posting protection outside the lodge. She urged Maya to call her lawyer, warning that the Thornhills would not back down. That evening, as the agent parked at the end of the driveway, the lodge felt less like a looming threat and more like a fortress standing guard. Maya sat at the kitchen table while Sophie slept, listening to the old house settle around them. When her attorney told her she might legally receive a substantial finder's fee after restitution, she barely processed the number. All she could think about was the price of doing what was right, the fear, the risk, the certainty that powerful people would fight to reclaim what they had stolen. But despite the dread coiling in her stomach, Maya felt something new rise within her, a resolve sharper than fear. She would not be bullied, bought, or broken. The months that followed were an unrelenting storm of lawsuits, hearings, and aggressive attempts by the Thornhill family to discredit her. Their lawyers argued that she had tampered with evidence, framed their legacy, and trespassed on property they claimed still held their rights. But their ledgers, contained decades of damning documentation. Former associates testified. Investigators connected items to old thefts. Bit by bit, the Thornhill empire collapsed, unable to withstand the weight of its own deception. Museums and families reclaimed treasures once thought lost forever, many sending Maya letters of gratitude so heartfelt they brought her to tears. The media cast her as a reluctant hero, a single mother who chose integrity over fortune. When restitution concluded, Maya received a finder's fee that ensured she and Sophie would never again face eviction or hunger. Yet instead of fleeing the lodge and its painful history, she transformed it. With her new resources, she founded an organization dedicated to recovering stolen cultural property and helping families reclaim what had been taken from them. She hired researchers, investigators, and attorneys. Even skeptics in Pinewood Hollow eventually sought to work with her, realizing the woman they once doubted had built something extraordinary. Through it all, Sophie grew into a young woman who understood that courage wasn't loud or glamorous. It was choosing what was right, even when the world told you to take the easy way out. Years later, the lodge stood reborn, its windows bright, its stones strong, its halls filled with warmth rather than shadows. On quiet evenings, Maya and a teenage Sophie sat on the restored porch watching deer graze at the tree line, the mountain wind singing gently through the pines. Reporters still requested interviews, publishers still begged for book deals, but Maya had long stopped chasing attention. Instead, she poured her life into her foundation, which now operated across multiple states, returning countless stolen artifacts to families and institutions. The townspeople who once avoided her now greeted her with gratitude, their voices softer with understanding. One evening, Sophie leaned against her mother's shoulder and said she had written her school essay about heroes and had written about Maya. The words struck Maya deeper than any award ever could. She thought of her grandmother who had held onto the lodge for decades out of fear, yet left it to Maya out of faith. She thought of the woman she used to be, overworked, overlooked, exhausted, and terrified, standing in a diner under buzzing lights with nothing but determination in her bones. Now she had rebuilt a life grounded in truth, justice, and love. As dusk gathered over Mercy Ridge, Maya whispered, "This place didn't ruin my life. It saved it." And for the first time, the lodge felt entirely at peace.